All right. Since my other videos got deleted on this red blue, let me do this again. So if you look at the red and the blue from a Luciferian decode, you're only going to see one level. It's multidimensional. The Bible is very clear that blue is law, and you can decipher that red is grace. Because the blood, when you cut your finger, it comes out red, right? You're cut, but it comes out red. When it's not cut, it's blue. Jesus went to the cross, was pierced, his blood, he shed his blood. So, from a spiritual perspective, a biblical perspective, blue is law. You can find that in Deuteronomy. The blue fringe represents the law. Every time they saw a blue fringe, it represented the law. Red is grace, and you know it is. You just know it is. It's just built into you. But the letter A is the blood, because it goes back to the ox, the bullock, the sacrifice. Jesus was sacrificed. Red is grace. Red is grace. Blue is law. Now, you see blue is cold. Red is hot. You're on fire. You're freezing. So those are under law. They're not really preaching anything it's just they're not doing anything. They're not even moving. There's no movement. If you preach the grace of God, then you're on fire. So that's from a biblical perspective. Now, from this perspective, the red versus the blue is face to face. Somebody says, I'm red, I'm blue, red, blue, blue, red, red, blue, blue, red. I heard somebody on YouTube one time say, blue, red, red, blue, and it sounded like the same word. So in the horizontal plane, and look down here. See, I've got blue, and I've got red right there. So in the horizontal plane, you got a red team versus a blue team. You got a red politics versus blue politics. You got a red football jersey versus a blue football jersey. Basketball, football, hockey, whatever. So red versus blue in the horizontal plane is the division. That's the cutting, the birthing, because when you face off with somebody in the natural, you're going to get cut, they're going to get cut to push out the baby. So when the blue faces off with the red football team, the football, when they hit each other, the football pops out. And the football is the shape of the Vesica Piscis, the birthing. So it represents the birthing to their next state. So when you face off with somebody, or you communicate with somebody, or you do anything where you're face to face with somebody, that's the turning machine that cuts you and pushes out the baby till Christ be formed in you. So from the natural plane, the red versus blue, the horizontal face to face is a blue looking at themselves. The blue is looking at another version of themselves. The blue jersey is looking at the red jersey, and they're facing off, and at first they're enemies, and then they wake up and they become aware that, hey, they're no different than me. We're both in the same game, in the same court, so we don't really have to face off anymore because none of us are going to win. It's not about winning. It's about communion and growing. Iron sharpens iron. The flesh cuts the flesh. So the red versus blue in the horizontal is cutting. The flesh cuts the flesh. But when you face off with a born again in the natural, the iron sharpens iron. The spirit sharpens the spirit. It's still a cutting because it's cutting out the flesh and cutting in the spirit. But when they're not in the spirit walk and they're all in the natural, they're cutting each other and hurting each other, and they're fighting and they're going down a spiral. But they're actually looking at a mirror image of themselves in the horizontal plane. Now, so you've got the Old Testament, which is law. You got the New Testament, which is grace. The blue and the red. The letter of the law killeth, but the spirit gives life. So red would represent the spirit versus the flesh. The letter killeth, the blue represents caterpillar. The red represents a butterfly. So there's a metamorphosis to change, but that's the vertical plane, not the horizontal. So as you're down here fighting with each other, you're in the red versus blue. Red, blue, blue, red, blue, red. Same, you're just looking at yourself. You're fighting each other for no reason. That's why they made the Superman movies, to show that you can rise above the red versus blue. But they do it in the energy of the flesh. And if you try to rise above the red versus blue in your own strength without Jesus, the Holy Spirit, you will still be in another box of red versus blue. Well, I'm no longer doing politics, but then my team's the Cowboys, my team's the Redskins. It's just a continual box. So the only way to really escape the red versus blue is to get born again and walk in the Spirit. As long as you walk in the flesh, you're fighting against others, but you're also fighting against yourself, because God is up here and you're trying to be in union down here in the natural with somebody but really the union's up here. God is spirit, and there has to be law and grace. Jesus fulfilled the law and the prophets, and he also fulfilled the grace, full of grace and truth. So Jesus fulfilled all this down here in the natural. He fulfilled the law and the prophets, and he's full of grace and truth. So he fulfilled what's happening down here in the natural, and that's the spirit. In him is fullness. And so as you learn to walk in the spirit, you move from the horizontal to the spiritual, and you no longer play the game. Now you will fall back into it, and you'll probably beat yourself up. Well, why did I get involved in the red versus blue? He said, she said, and they're bad, they're evil, and I'm good, and you're evil, and they're evil, and they're good, and everybody's evil at the foot of the cross. Everybody's sin stinks to the high heaven. So the red versus blue has a horizontal aspect, it has a vertical aspect, and it has a biblical aspect, law and grace. The red versus blue is more than just one dimension. And so the Luciferian, the gematria people, they'll just say, you need to be Superman and rise up. How are you going to rise out of this in the energy of the flesh? You can't. Only Jesus could. And that's the cycle. And a fourth way of looking at it is the red versus blue is the cycle. Hot and cold, the seasons. A fifth way of looking at it is if you go to a barbershop, you'll see the red versus blue Turing machine. So you go to a barbershop where there's cut. So the red versus blue represents turn. You go to the barbershop to get a hair cut, but on the sign it's red versus blue, which is turn. Cut, turn. They cut your hair. They turn you in the chair, turn around, and the types of shadows are completely. So what happens at a barbershop? You sit in a chair and they're shaping your haircut. You're being shaped and formed. So God is using the red versus blue system to shape you and form you and cut out the flesh and cut in the spirit. And the Luciferians, the Gematrias, the witches, they only decode it for the horizontal, and they hate the red versus blue. But it's not to hate the red versus blue, but to understand that is what's needed to do a face-to-face growth. Without the red versus blue, you would not grow. You need something, you need resistance. Every force has an equal and opposite reaction. So you need resistance to grow. Your muscles, lifting weights, whatever. You need that resistance. You couldn't even move without it. There has to be friction to even move. And so that red versus blue friction from a spiritual side is a birthing to your next state. The red versus blue from the cartoon Superman perspective is laughable. Those who see past the red versus blue, they look at people still in the red versus blue and they laugh at them. So you're still thinking that you think that the Democrats and the Republicans aren't working together behind the scenes. It's all a joke. The red versus blue is a joke, but God allows it when you're in it because you're not aware. You're like a zombie. You're not self-aware of what's going on. And so because you're not in awareness, God has to give you the red versus blue to try to knock you back into being awake because you're asleep. You're asleep, Neo. And so you need the red versus blue to wake you up because you need some shock treatment. The red versus blue is a shock treatment to wake you up, that when you look at somebody else, you're looking at yourself because everybody's per the sun, per sun. And so you need the shock treatment of the red versus blue to take you out of zombie mode and make you aware of your inner man and your thoughts, that it's all Jesus and it has nothing to do with you, or you're pointing your finger and you got 3 pointing back. You point your finger at somebody, oh, you're bad, you're red. Oh, you're bad, you're blue. And so the shock treatment of this system is needed to snap you out of your slumber and wake you up because you're not aware of you're not aware. Neo, you're not aware. You're not awake. You got to wake up. And so we got to hit you with something. The purpose of the sports and anything in life, which is the red versus blue, is to wake you up and to show you that you're looking at a different multiverse of yourself. That's what it is, the multiverse. That's what's happening.